Please welcome your moderator, Dr. Ida Sim, Professor of Medicine, Co-Director of Biomedical Informatics of the Clinical and Translational Science Institute, University of California at San Francisco, and co-founder of mHealth, and her panelists, Dr. John Mattison, Assistant Medical Director, Chief Medical Information Officer, Kaiser Permanente, Chuck Parker, Executive Director, Continua Health Alliance, Kabir Kasargod, Director, Business Development, Qualcomm Life, and Maneesh Goyal, Vice President, Corporate Development, WellTok.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here for the last panel. And thank you to WLSA for hosting us. mHealth is solving a problem. And the problem that we're solving is that mobile health apps and solutions are being built individually, in silos, without an easy way to integrate either the apps or the data. Which means that there are a lot of great products being built, and we've heard a number of them over the days here at the conference, but the apps don't add up. But with over half of Americans having more than one chronic disease condition, we need mHealth to add up to meet our complex needs. So to reach mHealth's full promise, we are not going to be able to get there one app at a time. Now, mHealth aims to break down the silos in mHealth so that we can integrate data and to allow modular reuse of software components. It's important to say that mHealth is not an app. We do not build apps. We are a nonprofit startup which is building the only open architecture for mobile health. You can think of us as a way to build mHealth so that your product can integrate with and talk with others. Let me illustrate with an example of a company that we heard about earlier today, and that's TickTrack. I don't know if you guys are out there in the audience. TickTrack, as you heard, is device agnostic. They're pulling in data from many third parties to provide their users with a deeper understanding. So they need to pull in data, for example, from lots and lots of activity monitors. And they're doing that right now by building one-off interfaces to the APIs of each of the data sources of each of the activity monitors that they support. Now, come Christmas season, there's probably going to be another hot-selling activity monitor, and TickTrack will have to go out and build another one-off interface to that monitor. Now, multiply this across the many data streams that a company like TickTrack wants to integrate: behavioral data, physiologic data, social data. Multiply this also across all the companies in the mHealth space that also need to build their own interfaces on a one-off basis in silos. And you can see that there is actually a lot of unnecessary friction in the systems that's sapping both innovation and dollars. So the mHealth solution to this is three components of our architecture, and that's APIs, community, and open source reusable software modules. So first, mHealth is creating a set of APIs and principles for data and app integration. So TickTrack, instead of writing multiple different API calls to all the different data sources, would write one API to get at activity data from all the activity monitors and data sources. Now, of course, it's not as simple as that, right? Because it's not just about getting at the data, it's getting at data that you understand. And that is critically, critically important in health. Many of you know that health data standards has been a real challenge for the health IT space. It's bedeviled us for decades, really. Because in order to take clinical action and to get clinical insights from mHealth data, we need to be very clear what that data is. If you're pulling data in from multiple glucometers, for example, you better be darn sure you know whether that glucose level is a random glucose or a fasting glucose. And that's just a pretty simple example. If you're pulling data from an EHR, you need to know what that data is clinically and be very clear about it. It's not something where you can be sloppy about. So what is mHealth's approach to that? We do not develop data standards, and we do not impose standards, because the experience from health IT really has been that imposing standards on a very fast-moving ecosystem like mHealth is not going to work. So the more we can standardize how we describe and exchange health data, the safer mHealth will be, the more effective it will be, and the more we'll be able to learn by pulling data together. So what we're doing in mHealth is that we're making it easier for people to use existing standards like SNOMED, like ICD-10, to describe their data, to describe their APIs, and then allow standard APIs to emerge really through community usage patterns. It's a much more emergent way of getting at standards rather than imposing them. So the really important second component of what Open mHealth is doing is community. Open communities of developers that are building in the Open mHealth way. And then thirdly, the open source modules that some of these developers will be contributing to the community, modules for data processing, data visualization, and for generating scientific evidence of efficacy. Many of you will recognize shades of open source communities as in the internet, in Eclipse, Apache, those kinds of open source models. That is actually by design. We are bringing the model of open communities and innovation from the internet world to the health world. So today we're very excited to announce the Catalyst initiative with 10 partners from across the mHealth ecosystem that are partnering with us to build and to collaborate in the Open mHealth way. These are partners who are opinion leaders in the various parts of the mHealth sector, catalyzing the ecosystem to go open for mHealth. With me on stage today are 4 of our 10 partners. Starting in a robot form over there is John Mattison, who's waving, and I'll wave back. John is in Denver. He's with Kaiser. He's the CMIO of Southern California Kaiser Permanente. We also have Chuck Parker, who's Executive Director of the Continua Alliance. We have Kabir Kasargod, who's Director of Business Development at Qualcomm Life. And we have Maneesh Goyal, who's a VP at WellTok. They will be telling us that from their perspective what an open architecture does for them and why Open mHealth and our approach is good for the mHealth ecosystem. But before I turn it over to John, I want to acknowledge and thank our other partners, including TickTrack, who's here at the conference, also Ginger.io, Entra Health Systems, Cal IT2 Qualcomm Institute from UC San Diego, Food Care, and also thanks very much to Rob McRae and WLSA for supporting our presence here. Please go to our website. We have more details about our partners and what they're doing with us, and a place for you to sign up and join the Open mHealth movement, because it really is a community movement. The more we do it together, the more we're going to realize the benefits. There will be a place there for you to sign up, and there are groups here that I've talked to in the last couple of days, Agamatrix, Aventine, Imageware, XPRIZE. Please go sign up, and hopefully more of you as well. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to John Mattison from Kaiser for his remarks.
Great, thanks, Ida. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. So it's been a real privilege for me to have met Ida and the entire Open mHealth team. I've been working with them for a couple of years now, and am very impressed with the rate of progress and the number of participants we have in the project. But before I get started, from where I'm sitting in Denver, looking out at the audience here, you're all looking a little bit mechanical. So could some of you in the back room just wave your hand a little bit so I'm sure you're not all a bunch of robots? Thank you. Okay. All right. So Kaiser Permanente has been dedicated to evidence-based medicine for a long time. And as a result of that work, we've enjoyed some really good external reviews of the quality and safety of care that we deliver, and we're continuing to widen the gap in terms of that. But it's really directly related to the amount of focus we put on evidence-based medicine, and it's just pervasive in everything we do. So as we approach the mobile health world, it's critical to us that we understand which apps are working for which people and why, not just to the level of the application, but which specific modalities of communication are working best for which specific individual, how to sequence messaging, how to stage the different modalities, how to introduce behavioral economics in ways that prove to be most effective. And we believe that there are going to be patterns that we'll find, but we're going to be starting with patterns that seem to make the most sense based upon some heuristics, but then very quickly learn from each individual user of these apps what is working best for them, so we can really extend the notion of personalized and precision medicine from that of the care we deliver directly to the care that we deliver to individuals through the mobile health space, whether it's using the remote devices and the sensing devices that all of you are working on, or the mobile apps themselves. And so part of what we want to do, in addition to being able to extend the evidence-based approach that we've taken to everything we do into the mobile space, we want to have a coherence of the ecosystem so that we actually can prescribe multiple apps, knowing that there's going to be the ability to compare and contrast and merge the data in ways that allow us to get the big picture of what we're actually achieving within individual patients. So we have attention at the highest levels of the organization. Our executive director for all of digital health is deeply involved in this process. And we are looking at continuing to extend our level of involvement and how we use the architecture of Open mHealth to really learn from every single patient and every single app that we prescribe and every single sensing technology, what is working, what's not working, how to improve. And as Edward Deming so clearly articulated decades ago, you can't improve what you don't measure. And as Ida just articulated so clearly, you can't measure things that don't have some level of standardization. And so the architecture of Open mHealth is intended to be a low overhead approach for developers and device manufacturers that they can enter into this ecosystem, gain the leverage of having a certain level of data interoperability, at least, with other members of the ecosystem, so that the value of the products that they provide is further leveraged in a broader array of products that are used by an individual patient. So we're very committed to this. And the last thing I'll say before turning it back over to Ida is that on June the 4th, our CIO is making a presentation at the Datapalooza in Washington, D.C., and making some very significant announcements extending our commitment to an evidence-based approach to mobile health in general and to the contribution to a healthy ecosystem of mobile apps. So this is just the beginning of many productive steps in extending an evidence basis from all of the care we deliver within the walls of our institution into the mobile health space. And I thank all of you for your support for where we're headed with this. Thanks, Ida.
Great, thank you very much, John. Let's move on to Chuck Parker from Continua Health Alliance.
Sure, thank you very much. And so many of you here are aware of Continua. We're an association that's been created, it was by industry about 7 years ago, really to focus on the interoperability standards for these devices. So as you've talked about specifically, it's around looking at how do we get the standards in place. And so we've been working towards creating a set of guidelines that are built upon international standards for how you get devices to communicate with one another. We now have about 90 plus devices and services that have now been certified throughout the industry today. And that number is continuing to grow, and we're starting to see that finally begin to take hold in markets across the globe, where we now have activities in nations who are saying, hey, I want to use standards as a requirement, and as a result of that are adopting and using these continuous standards, which are in essence open standards to begin with. I think the important thing here, though, and where our collaboration point is that while we're working with devices, we don't really get into the application side of that. We don't, we pass data in a standardized format. We know how to get it from point A to point B at the end of that chain, or point Z in some cases. But what we want to do is make sure that the applications and how they can actually share that data amongst each other as well. And make sure that that open capability is there for the applications to be able to move data around. We sort of stop at the endpoint, which is at the health information exchange point, at the personal health record, where we hand that data off, or to the electronic medical record inside the facility. Beyond that, it's really the applications that need to take that data and be able to do something with it, to make it actionable, to be able to engage the individual at the end of that, or provide information to the researchers on the backside of that about the health of the individual. So I think from our perspective, we're positioned very well in the sense of how we work together, in that sense of we're bringing standardization to the device architectures. Now it's also looking at how do we make that available inside the application capabilities.
Great, thank you, Chuck. That was a very nice summary. Next is Kabir Kasargod from Qualcomm Life.
So Qualcomm Life's philosophy is mobilize healthcare. That's what we look for, look to do in the market. And we see a lot of alignment with many of the things you just talked about, Ida, especially around building an open ecosystem that anybody can leverage. When you look at the market today, there's a lot of silos across apps, devices, and services. So if you get a weight scale, a blood pressure cuff, a glucometer, and many of us in this room are a lot more technically savvy than perhaps grandma at home, who probably needs to be monitored. And to expect grandma to get a weight scale, be able to then have a Wi-Fi connection to set up her SSID, have a laptop or a computer, first of all, to do that, then be able to make sure that she pairs that particular Wi-Fi device to that particular laptop, then send that data, and then be able to actually get an app or a website to be able to collect that data. All of that is asking too much off of the user. Users want to do the right thing. If you ask a user and show them how to take a reading, they will actually take a reading. But if you put barriers, especially technological barriers, it gets really hard for them to be able to do that. So our goal in mobilizing healthcare is really to break down those barriers so that it's seamless. Grandma goes to a physician, she gets a kit. Everything's pre-programmed. All she does is come home and plug a particular hub or a device in the wall, and that's it. Anytime she stands on the scale, the data goes back. And the philosophy of actually enabling that data to flow in freely so that grandma gets to decide where the data goes is really the key. Everybody asks who owns the data. It's actually the user who owns the data, and they get to decide whom to give consent to as far as where the data goes. So what I really like about Open mHealth is the philosophy of doing right by the user. And that's really a consolidated philosophy for Qualcomm Life as well. One example I'd like to give where it actually came to fruition was for one of our partners who launched our TueNet platform. They deployed it in a diabetic population. And one of the ladies who's diabetic has lost her sight because of diabetes. And she's been using the kind of clunky system that I was just explaining earlier, where there's Wi-Fi connection, there's a computer, and she's to manually type her readings in order to get it to her physician. And she has been doing that because she didn't want her condition to get worse. We gave her the TueNet system that now enables her to track her readings. And she sent an email back unprompted to our partner saying, "This has transformed my life." And that's the reason why we wake up in the morning and we do these things. So for us, it's really important that removing the barriers, including what Open mHealth does here, which is enabling an open market to deploy the right applications, deploy the right solutions, is the right way to go. And I would only say that you're only as strong as your ecosystem. So enabling partners to launch solutions is really the key to rising the tide for all of us.
Great, thanks. That's a nice soundbite. You're only as strong as your ecosystem. Maneesh Goyal from WellTok.
Thank you. A little background on WellTok. The company's 5 years old. We just about 2 months ago announced a Series B round of $19 million led by a pretty all-star cast of venture investors. The company's based in Denver. We're at the base, we're a platform as a service, and we're around consumer engagement. What does that mean? So we enable payers or any population managers to communicate and interact with consumers, their members. That's sort of jargon, but what we're solving is a business model problem that you all struggle with, or a lot of you struggle with. You've got this great technology, you've got this great product, you've got this great app. How do you get it scaled? How do you get paid for it, right? Consumers have shown limited ability or desire to interact or pay for certain goods and services related to their health. The only real folks that have capital are the insurance companies with the premium dollars. So we're enabling that. We have close to a dozen customers, including some of the largest health insurers in the country. We've just crossed over the 12 million lives mark on our platform, so we're now fairly large in terms of the number of people we can reach with our platform. And how we fit into the Open mHealth ecosystem is really that we want to remove all the frictions in the market, right? So there are silos, there are processes, there are scalability issues, there are business issues that exist in the healthcare ecosystem, and we're solving those. We have master contracts with the largest insurers to be able to take products to them and say, try this. We've verified it, we've certified it, it fits into your viewpoint this way. And to John's point, we allow them to then do an A/B analysis of 2 different glucometers, which they really can't do right now. They don't have the scale to do that. They don't have the technology staff to do that. And Open mHealth really accelerates that process. We don't have to do 100 different APIs to get all these partners integrated. We can just partner with Open mHealth and support their initiative, or work with Qualcomm in a similar fashion. So we're very excited to be supporting this particular initiative.
Great, thank you. Do any of the panel members have questions for each other before we take questions from the audience?
Ida, this is John. Yeah, I neglected to mention that we already have a pilot in place with diabetics using the Qualcomm 2net technology, the Entra technology, and we're going to be adding in Ginger.io very, very soon, and other vendors that will be used by the same patients with the same diagnoses. And there's a very clear advantage for each of the applications alone, but together we are fully anticipating some real synergies in our ability to manage those patients and for them to achieve their own personal goals. So this is not a hypothetical situation. We actually have this architecture as the foundation for a multi-product pilot with diabetics today.
Right, and I think what we're learning from pulling this initiative together is that the partners that we're pulling together are actually partners with each other. And the companies that are listed up here, they're finding common needs between themselves, and business partnerships are being struck up because all the partners here realize that being open and building a strong ecosystem together is part of their business strategy. And so that's been a side effect that has been very gratifying to see as well. Anyone else have comments for each other?
I also want to mention about Continua. I think we are a strong supporter of Continua, especially in the plug-and-play solution space. I mean, for us, it's really important that when you think about a device out there, you don't have to worry about the radio technology, the operating system, and so on. So we feel that Continua is driving that really well, and just like we are a good partner of Open mHealth, we're the same with Continua as well.
Maybe we have time for maybe one or two questions. There are questions from the audience? It's too late in the day for it. Okay, well, thank you very much for your attention, and we'll move on to the next part of the program. Thank you.
Please welcome Don Jones and Rob McRae for closing remarks.
Goodbye, John. You're turned off. Crowd's getting thinner, but we like to provide. Can we have the house lights come up a bit? I don't think we have to be in such bright light. We just like to come out at the end of these sessions, and we call it "What have we learned here today?" But just call on you, because we don't have time for Q&A during our sessions, to ask if you want to say, what have we learned? There's some comments that will be beneficial to the entire community here. Don may start. I'm going to just make one. I'm going to make a really short prediction, and that is in about 5 years, I'm going to be as tired of the word engaged as I have of some other adjectives. But for a while, I'm going to continue to use it, because I do think that the engaged consumer and the engaged patient and engagement as a concept that we have to make more real and more universal is something that is worth focusing on. But I know we're going to get tired of it. So that's my prediction. No. Don, do you?
I'm pleased by one big trend, and that is that when we first got started here, we had a lot of large companies, a lot of Fortune 500 companies that were kicking tires, looking for information. And now we've actually got Fortune 500 companies that are actually engaged, developing products and services, and that's been across the board from medical device to pharma to consumer products companies. And so that's been a very important trend, because that actually says there's real money behind the industry, and that's been obviously followed with the venture capital community, as you heard, with last year's investment hitting $1.4 billion. So the trends are all going in the right direction. They're evidenced by energy and much of what we heard. But this is your opportunity at the end here to provide us a little bit of feedback, a little bit of highlights of what you thought was important and your takeaways, if you want to share anything. If you don't want to share anything, we're going to send you on to drinks. We have a shy group here today?
Yeah. No, they're not shy. They're just quiet.
There we go.
There we go.
I thought it was really interesting to see the progress that's been made over the past year with bringing on wet lab sort of chemistry into this wireless mix with the work that Scanadu shared today. So I think that's another piece of this that we'll be seeing more of in the future. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a great comment. We're actually seeing quite a bit of wet lab space, and point of care DNA snippet analytics is another category that you're going to see more of. We actually have a trial launching at Scripps that'll be done in retail pharmacies, where before you get your drug, for a couple of drugs, they'll actually ask you for a DNA swab sample, and in one case it'll be to determine whether the drug you're about to get is actually going to be metabolized. In other words, is it going to do you any good? And in the other case, it's going to be find out whether it's going to kill you. So the option will be, would you like to not have the DNA test and play Russian roulette, or perhaps have it? So, interesting things, I think, in the microfluidics areas, and then also in some technologies that are not necessarily using microfluidics. But certainly, so that observation that the clinical laboratory diagnostics moving into this space is moving fast. We're also going to see imaging move in a very, very big way. We've actually seen, haven't demonstrated, we've actually seen your out-of-the-pocket cell phone turn into an ultrasound machine using just the microphone and the speaker of the cell phone, and being able to use it to actually draw images. It's still pretty crude, but there's actually an amazing amount of image capability in just the standard cell phone in a very fascinating way. So again, more convergence, right? More convergence of technologies, and I think we're really happy with what's happened with the Tricorder Prize, because we've had so many people from surprising parts of the world come forward with their ideas for the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize, and I think it's really been a good propellant to get folks thinking about what's possible, and of course that was the whole intent.
Is this on? Tom Swiderman from Midmark. This is my 5th or 6th time attending, and I find it interesting that this year I'm sensing that there's little question that the technology's ready, the sensors are ready, the safety and security and the ubiquity of the technology's there, and we're now on to the messaging and the ability to convince the stakeholder community that this is worthwhile. And I think, as Rob pointed out, and I think as Don pointed out, the big companies are now starting to put some teeth into it, and I think it's just a matter of time until I think the reimbursement path, the FDA, and the other with people that are somewhat resistant to some of this are starting to buy in. So I think we're in a point of time where eventually we're going to see some real uptake. So it's been an interesting transition to watch.
Tom, it's been interesting. We've actually there's been enough deals done, M&A deals, not investment deals, but M&A deals, where we've actually had some Fortune 500s come and said, are we too late? Are we missing our opportunities? Or we had our eye on that company, we didn't even know it was going to be for sale. So I think even that trend the ball has started to roll on the M&A activity.
Mike.
Yeah, I think one of the most positive things that I heard today, and I've been seeing in my travels in mHealth circles, is the move away from there's an app for this and an app for that to more holistic, integrated approaches, and we saw some of that here. It's exciting.
We can't solve all of our problems with technology.
We still have a challenge, and I'll put it out there. We don't know the answer to this one, and that is, how do you do app fulfillment? If you define an app as any combination of software, maybe on your phone, maybe some sensors, and maybe some drugs, how do you get that fulfilled? Will pharmacies step up and fulfill that? I mean, can you actually go to a pharmacy and get an app download and an explanation of how to use it if you need it, the drug and the sensors, all in one package, one box, one envelope, whatever it comes in? Or is it going to be some other mechanism? So we've got an unanswered question of how to bring those pieces together as they start coming, as you start getting solutions that are full therapies in a box, so to speak.
Yeah, I think even on top of that, there's a question when the range of therapeutic choices go from traditional medical devices and prescribed devices to unregulated consumer devices, where do you go and who can you rely on as the source of the recommendation and or prescription for what is best for you at that given time? So there's a new opportunity there for the Walgreens of the world and perhaps others in the virtual virtual world to satisfy that need. Is there a question over there?
Hi, Mark Title, Advanced Technology Leadership. What I'm noticing most this year is how we are providing solutions for the global community. The photograph of the African warriors using cell phones was just quite amazing. And then the work that Dean came in and the other one presented today of the single kiosk providing water, power not just to generate the water, but to run the refrigeration, to store the drugs, as well as provide power for global communication. This really is an international community, and we are providing solutions for healthcare for underprivileged, under-enabled, under-serviced populations all over the world. And we can end world hunger, world sickness. This technology has a lot of leverage.
Yep, absolutely.
I get jealous when I look thinking Africa that I could, if I just had the M-Pesa system, I could have paid the babysitter from my phone, and I can't do that here, you know, my phone to her phone kind of thing.
Anything else? Well, Don, I think we're put a wrap on number 8, except for we have the reception, we have food, we have drink, we have the demo pavilion, and we have interesting people here.
We'll be sending some feedback emails out to folks. I really encourage you to volunteer ideas, things you'd like to see, things you felt were missing, things you felt we could add to. Areas of interest that you want us to go search out and get the right speakers for. Please help grow the community. And secondly, I would ask all of you, this works because we pull in members. It doesn't actually work. These things are expensive to put on. It doesn't work because we have a sign-up fee to pay to go to the conference. There's too much cost involved. So any of you that are not members that are interested in joining, please talk to the Wireless Life Science Alliance, and any of you that are in a position to recommend to other companies to join this to get benefit out of either this conference, the summit, or the academic conference in the fall, which is targeting engineering and clinical folks. Please encourage them to join.
Yep, absolutely. Our research conference this year is at Johns Hopkins campus in downtown Baltimore on November 1st to the 3rd. And the 9th Convergence Summit will be held in this venue next May. I forget the exact dates. It's on our site. So I hope to see you all back and hear from you before then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for attending the 2013 Convergence Summit. We hope to see you next year.